Hello everyone on YouTube, hello my comrades. My name is Jessica, I'm based in the United States in the Twin Cities, and I want to start making regular posts talking about the climate movement and what my observations have been as someone who's been involved in it, in the climate justice movement for many years. So yeah, this is my first video, and today I want to talk about Extinction Rebellion UK and how their strategy and how they relate to the police. I am a member of Extinction Rebellion Twin Cities, and this isn't said with hatred or with shame, but it's said because it's important that we publicly talk about our disagreements so that we can work through them and grow together. So I'm going to start off by reading a piece. Let me get that ready for y'all. Wait. There we go. It's backwards on the camera, so. But it says, common sense for the 21st century. Only nonviolent rebellion can now stop climate breakdown and social collapse. This is a book by Roger Hallam. Roger Hallam, who's a key founder of Extinction Rebellion UK and leader in that movement. So let me just read this part here. Proactive and respectful police engagement. A proactive approach to the police is an effective way of enabling mass civil disobedience in the present context. This means meeting police as soon as they arrive on the scene and saying two things clearly. This is a nonviolent, peaceful action, and we respect that you have to do your job here. We have repeated evidence that this calms down police officers, thus opening the way to subsequent civil interactions. Extinction Rebellion actions have consistently treated the police in a polite way. We are arrested at the police stations, engaging in small talk, and quite often in political discussions and other topics where activists might feel affinity. If police initially stonewall activists, they can become more open by a willingness to engage and listen to them. Okay. So there's a lot wrong with that. So on the one hand, telling the police that you're doing action before you actually do it, I think that is a big no. Even if the action is public, there is no need to give the police any more information than they're already going to have with it being a public action. It may not seem quite as big deal with the strategy XR has, which is thousands of people taking part in mass actions. There's no way you're going to hide that from police. I understand that. But there's also something about it that, let me back up a bit and explain this. I would describe the relationship aspects of the population have, especially white people, have with the police as almost being an abusive relationship. Hear me out now. Making excuses for the violence that they inflict and the system they uphold. It doesn't matter if they're doing their job. Their job is to oppress colonized people, to oppress the working class. And part of our responsibility as people who do this work is political education for people who are new and coming in. Telling people that it's okay to have small talk with the police is really dangerous, because that's how you incriminate not only yourself but others. The way in which we in the U.S. A lot of actions we go about it is there's one person who talks to the police, and that is the police liaison. If you're not a police liaison, you don't talk to the police. And yes, the police liaison is supposed to be friendly, supposed to have good rapport with the police as a matter of strategy. But there is no misunderstanding that the role of the police is to maintain social order for the ruling class. And it's really important that we're honest and we talk about that, because the kind of rebellion we need is going to bring about more and more clashes with police. People are going to become more militant. They are going to become more radicalized when the violence is inflicted on their bodies and it's real to them. Also, another part, which maybe for some folks it goes without saying, is such a position on the cops is indicative of a white middle class background. This is indicative of people who don't feel the target on their back every day, who don't face that violence. And by spreading information like, and with this approach that XRUK seems to have with the police, it shows, in my opinion, a lack of solidarity with the struggles of colonized people in that country and across the globe. And then that gets me to another point, is disappointment that XRUK has not had an analysis of how colonialism is foundational to the system. That's colonialism and capitalism is foundational to what's happening with the destruction of the earth. It is, without addressing that system, without really rebelling against that, we will not win. We're just not going to win. And the people who are most impacted are those who have the most to gain from the upheaval of those systems. And if we want to be, what we should be is not just think of ourselves as a climate movement, but a climate justice movement. And climate justice means reparations and respect given to communities of color, poor communities, working people, understanding that there's certain people that are going to be displaced, and that we have a responsibility to stand by migrants, which is another thing that we in XR need to take a firm stand on, because there's going to be more migrants, and it's going to be controversial because there's a lot of white people who might be with us on climate change, but if once we start talking about race and talking about migration, then then they're super conservative. Well, you know what? That means we were going to alienate some of those people, and that's okay. It means that our goal of getting 3.5% of the people to resist, well, perhaps it's problematic to think that those people resisting are going to be white middle class. Maybe the movement would look differently right now if the people who founded it didn't have that underlying thought or expectation. Let me find another part of this book I want to share. Let me just put this right here for now. One more second here. Okay, here we go. Alright, I'm going to read this part right here. Let's see. Poorly constructed messaging will often put off new people from another identity, not least because of the prejudices of the people receiving the message. Some of this may be unavoidable. For instance, a black woman came to an Extinction Rebellion meeting and left afterwards, intending not to come back because there were too many piercings. You know what, wait, let me just keep reading. The structural solution is then to create different spaces for various different groups. For example, working class mobilizations are organized by working people themselves, as opposed to middle class groups that claim to speak for them. Similarly, people of color can organize in their own spaces. People should therefore be encouraged to set up their own groups which agree on basic red lines such as nonviolence, but are able to promote their own cultural identities. Oh boy. Okay. So this, on the one hand, it seemed like he's basically saying because one black woman came to an event that black people as a whole are socially conservative, or I don't know what he meant by that, but it's really strange that he cited that one instance of a black woman as if was representative of the attitudes of black people. Okay. Now, this other part's really concerning. Now, on the one hand, I do agree that white people need to respect the fact that people of color and working class people need to and should create our own institutions, our own organizations that other groups, white dominant groups, work in alliance with. I have no problem with that. But within it, there isn't there's a lack of responsibility when it comes to groups that are currently white dominated to follow the leadership of colonized people, to create movements and do the hard work of being anti-colonial organizations. I mean, this is simply sounds like white people can have their group, black people can have their group, people of color have their group, and everything, and that's how we're going to do business. It's like, no. There's a responsibility to make spaces anti-colonial. There's a responsibility to follow the leadership of oppressed people. And that, that reading that part of the book was really disappointing. I will say there are other parts of this book I do really like as well. But right now I'm offering a critique of that I've held for a long time of what I've seen come out of XR UK. Now, those who are active in Standing Rock and are active in Ferguson, I think this idea of being friendly with the police and that working is not, it's just not going to sit well with people. Lastly, it also gets back to the strategy of having thousands of people arrested, mass arrests, as if the goal is to get arrested. People getting arrested en masse has been happening, and the crisis is still going. This is actually part of the strategy I disagree with. In the United States, different than the UK, the prison industrial complex has been set up to make sure that if there's social upheaval, that there's enough beds and enough prisons to fill them. And this is something after the civil rights movement, and then the war on drugs, which was a form of control, a form of genocide against our communities. I'm very skeptical that a mass arrest strategy in and of itself is a good thing. I think we should be working on minimizing arrest by having strategic actions that cause the most disruption and the least amount of loss, which means less people behind bars. And I think, I won't make the argument that civil disobedience is a white thing. That's problematic when people say that, because civil disobedience, the most notable cases has been Gandhi in India, Martin Luther King in the United States, and the civil rights movement here. But I will say, I do think a fetishization of mass arrests and a hunky-dory approach to law enforcement is indicative of being in a position of privilege, of not having to experience the violence that the system inflicts on people. Well, that's all I have to say, and this is one of my first videos. I'd appreciate any and all comments. I don't speak for Extinction Rebellion US or Twin Cities when I make this video. I am speaking for myself, all in the spirit of wanting this movement to grow and become the anti-colonial, anti-capitalist force that I know it can be.